Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP, a biweekly conversation in with which AARP staff and volunteers talk to Connecticut decision makers about policies and programs that are of interest to older residents. My name is John Erlingheuser, and I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy and Community Outreach here at AARP Connecticut. And I'm very pleased to be joined by one of our great AARP volunteers, Ann Young-Jaffe. Ann, thanks for being with us today. And why don't you tell the folks a little about what you do for AARP, a little about your background, and some things that you think it might be important for folks to know about you.
Sure. Thank you, John. And Senator, it's a pleasure being with you today as well. I am a lifelong Connecticut resident. I currently live in Bloomfield with my husband and my daughter. I've been active with AARP for a couple of years now. And most of my work focuses in on the Disrupt Aging program. I go into colleges and universities, a lot of them right here in Connecticut. I talk about things like the changing demographics, the growth of older adults, what that means from a policy economic perspective. I talk about ageism. I talk about all the careers that'll be open to people because of this growth in the older population. And prior to my work with AARP, I was very active in corporations in Connecticut. I had a variety of roles, mostly in human resources, and I led leadership development programs. I also headed labor relations, where I worked in unionized companies. And more recently, I headed strategic initiatives for some healthcare companies. As I said, I am a recent retiree. I've been retired for about a year, which has been great, and it's allowed me to be more active with AARP. I have a great interest in government, both at the national level as well as the state level. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, Ann, thank you so much. And as our folks can see, Ann is just indicative of the great AARP volunteers we have with the kind of depth and breadth of knowledge and experiences. So we really do appreciate it. We couldn't do anything at AARP without our great volunteers. So it's also my pleasure, as Ann had said in her introduction, to welcome one of our great state senators in Connecticut, and that's Henri Martin from the 31st Senate District. He's ranking member of the legislature's Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. He's also ranking member of the Commerce Committee. And Senator Martin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background outside the legislature, what your professional background is, and then you could tell us, about what towns you represent, what other committees you might be on, in addition to finance, revenue, and bonding and commerce.
Sure. Well, first, John, thank you to you and to Ann for inviting me to participate in this. I do represent the 31st District, and that is composed of 5 communities. I live in Bristol, which I represent. Plainville, Harwinton, Thomaston, and Plymouth are the 5. I've been married 40 years to my wife, Roxanne. We've had 4 adult children. 3 grandchildren.
Wow.
And another one on the way that will arrive, I think, in a month and a half. So we're excited about that. John and I come from a blue collar family. I grew up in a construction family. Dad had a business for 40 years. I started swinging a hammer when I was 14, and mom had a hair salon, and retired after she put my brother and myself through college. And so I come from that type of family structure, entrepreneurs to some extent. But the construction, we started as carpenters. We went to renovation work, to single family homes, custom built homes, subdivisions. We built condominiums. We developed condominiums, congregate housing. Farmington Gate, or Village Gate in Farmington. We were one of the partners in that.
Wow.
And currently, I'm a real estate broker here in Bristol, and I do both residential and commercial. So, yes, I am a ranking member on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding, as well as the Commerce Committee. And the other 2 committees that I've been on, that I was formerly the ranking member of the Transportation Committee, and currently I'm a member of that committee, and as well as I'm a member of the executive and legislative committee, which is they're the nominations of executives who are going to be working for the governor's office or an agency in the state, and as well. So those are the 4 committees that I'm on now.
That's a great, and that's a great background. And, that's what I love about Connecticut and the legislature. We have people that bring all these different experiences. And I
Yeah.
think that's why our legislature works as well as it does. And we have the kind of responsiveness we have here. So, Ann, why don't
John,
I,
if
oh,
I
yes,
could just
please.
add to that, one of the best questions I got that I was asked. We have a lot of students that come and visit,
Yep.
so they come and see us in the chamber, and we get a chance to talk to them. One of the best questions was, "Are you all lawyers?" And no, the answer is no. We're not all lawyers, or actually, and I tell them about where I came from. But I sit next to a carpenter. I sit next to someone who is who works for a college system. There are some lawyers in the chamber, but here's a guy who owns a restaurant, and I can go down a list of different
Right.
trades and different backgrounds, and that shed a light to them that, oh, so you're not all lawyers. So it's pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. And that's a great perspective. And we really appreciate you pointing that out, because I don't think everybody really does get that. So, Ann, why don't you take our next question for us?
Sure. Senator, can you tell me a little bit more about your role as ranking member on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, what that entails, and also specifically, what kind of legislative proposals does your committee have jurisdiction over?
Sure. Probably the simplest way of describing or explaining that is, so the committee's composed of, listen, there are 27 different committees. There is a transportation committee, the finance committee, and the veterans committee, et cetera. And there's 27 different ones. And each of the committees have chairs and ranking members. And the chairs are composed, they're the head of the full committee. The ranking members, they lead the minority party. So the chairs are from the majority party, and they head the entire committee, whereas the ranking members are designated leaders of the minority party for those committees. And each of the committees, all 27 of them, have a chairperson from the House as well as the Senate, and also has a ranking member from the House and the Senate as well. So there's four sort of leaders, two chairs and two ranking members. And that's, in a nutshell, that sort of describes, what we do there, and what we're cognizant of in the Finance Committee is pretty much all the matters that deal with raising revenue in the state of Connecticut, in addition to bonding. The bonding, which is what that means is, we have so many different buildings that we own and we operate, and all the agencies that we have within our government system. They all sit in offices, and they all have heating and cooling, parking, and someone has to take care of that, manage that. And when they ask for money, and these agencies have their budgets annually that they put forth to the governor's office, they know that, I got to take care of this HVAC system, or I need to take care of this roof. The windows are outdated. So they come to us to ask for bonding. Hey, we need to fix this. And we're the committee of cognizance that authorizes those requests. And one other thing too, so we do that for the general agencies, but we're also responsible for the transportation side of things as well. So when there are road improvements that need to be done, they come to us to the special transportation fund aspect of it. So the government sort of broke down into two different components. One is the general fund, general budget, and then the transportation budget and the funding for that.
That's great. I just want our viewers to know, you're a ranking member of one of the two most important committees of the legislature, and it's great to have somebody with your kind of background dealing with all of that, and we really do appreciate it. And so you're ranking member of this important committee, Finance, Revenue, and Bonding, and you're leader, one of the two leaders of the minority party, and I know quite a bit gets done in a bipartisan way out of that committee, and so
Yeah.
you have significant amount of influence. So what are some of your priorities in this legislature that just started this Wednesday?
Ooh, that's a good question. Right off the top, without even have to thinking about it, is back in 2017, we were in constant deficits for years, right? Year after year. And we'd have to go figure out how are we going to find $250 million. And that I'm using that as an example. Out of that year, just in brief, that year there was the parties were so close in numbers that we had 18 Republicans and 18 Democrats, and that was in the Senate. And in the House, out of 151, we were 6 apart. That year, there was a Republican budget that got approved, not a Democratic budget, even though they had the majority in the House. It was a Republican budget. The governor, Malloy, at that time, vetoed it. We spent the whole summer negotiating and realizing we need to structurally fix our finances and how we taxed, how we raised revenue, how we spent money. So out of that summer, we came up with these bonding caps, revenue cap, a spending cap that allowed us to put some restrictions on all of those. They call them guardrails, right? Fiscal guardrails. But today, for the last 4 years, we've been able to have a surplus that has allowed us to pay down on long-term liability of we had $66 billion. You think about how big that number is, right? It's nutty. And how did we or the past legislators allow that to happen? So what we did in 2017, we're seeing the fruits of that now. We need to stay the course and maintain these caps. Bonding cap, we're not going to bond more than for these capital improvements, Ann, that I was mentioning to you about. We're not going to do more than this. The spending cap, we're not going to spend more than revenue that we get in. We've made sure that we have savings account in order the revenue cap is actually this, John. If all the revenue we raise, we're going to take off of 1.25%. We're going to put it aside. And then we're going to live and spend within this means here, right? If we should by chance we go over budget, we're going to go tap into that 1.25% first. So we built ourselves a little cushion. And then I can go on and talk about the volatility cap, which is really the one that's really helped us significantly regarding paying down our long-term liability. But I'm sure you have other questions. But,
no, I mean, and that's important work because we know, there are always people that are looking to kind of undo a lot of that, and I know your caucuses have been very instrumental in keeping feet to the fire to make sure that we keep our fiscal house in order, and because of that, we're able to do some of the other things that I know Ann's going to want to talk about.
Yeah, if I could just add to
Yes,
that,
please.
then we'll go to Ann. So because of these fiscal guidelines and the volatility cap, we are able to save. We paid down our liability by $6 to $7 billion. For $1 billion, it's equivalent to saving $85 million of interest every single year, which in our budget, we would have to pay that, right? We're saving over $500 million a year just on interest payments. We're able to use that $500 million to pay for additional services. So important, without a doubt, to keep these guardrails going and continue to pay down on the long-term liability so that we can continue to receive these additional savings in the interest payments that we can apply towards nonprofits, as an example.
Pays other dividends.
To help them because they're doing a great work for the state. So they are in our minds. So
appreciate
and
that.
I'm sorry, I'm long-winded.
No, that's important.
Exactly. No, thank you, Senator, for explaining that so clearly. My question has to do with tax relief for retirees. I know the legislature has done some work on that in the past. I'm a recent retiree, so this is near and dear to my heart. Clearly, it's a priority for AARP and all of our members. Could you tell me specifically what you've done for tax relief for retirees, and what can we hope might happen in this legislative session to further that?
Good question, Ann. I arrived in 2015. I've always wanted to be on the Finance Revenue and Bonding Committee. I think I was placed on there my first term as a member, sort of learned the ropes a little bit, and wanted to find out, how can we help the elderly? How can we help all of the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut? At that time, where there was just, people were migrating out of the state of Connecticut. How could we stop that out migration out migration versus in migration? The people that were leaving the state of Connecticut earned more income than those that were coming in. And in the end, we were losing revenue because of that. We had corporations that were making decisions to leave. So the questions that I asked, and other members of my caucus, and I'm sure there were some on the other side of the aisle, but what's the low-hanging fruit? Low-hanging fruit actually was addressing the Social Security payments or taxing, as well as the pensions, right? It didn't happen immediately, but you propose bills, they may get a hearing, they may not get a hearing, and they die. You reintroduce, and then maybe you get a little further up the field, and then it dies, and then it gets reintroduced, and you again move up the field. So I'm happy to say that going back to that 2017, that bipartisan agreement, the budget that we approved, in there was the Social Security would not be taxed, right? And in addition to that, we began the pension phase in or phase out, which way you want to interpret that. So it began at 14%. So you were receiving pension money. You would be able to deduct, or 14% of it would not be deductible. Then the following year, we would go to 28%. And then that was on a schedule. To be completed 100% within a 5 or 7 year period. Unfortunately, I think it was in 2019, we ran into a deficit again. So we put a pause onto it. So fast forward to 2022, the funds, we have surpluses, and we were able to, and happy to say that we were able to accelerate that pension portion and go to 100% right away. So now, and there is a condition, right? You have a certain threshold. So 75,000 or less if you're single, no taxes. And if you're married, 100,000 of pension money would be non-taxable. So what we're proposing, so that's sort of what happened, the pension, Social Security, non-taxable with those limits. What we agreed on last year, and it starts in 2024, is a phase out for those that above 75. So anything below 75 as a single will continue, no taxes. But above 75, up to 77,000, you'd pay 15% of your taxes would be non-taxable. And then 77 to 80 would be 30%. Then 80 to 85 45. So that it's escalating until you get to 100,000 or whatever it may be. Then at that point, you'd have to pay taxes on anything above the 100,000 or 75.
Uh,
So those are the things that we've done, and hopefully they will stay the course because things can change overnight.
Right.
And they do go after, as we looked at these things as being low hanging fruit, that is always a low hanging fruit
Well,
for the other, to, if things should ever turn around. So,
I will just say, Senator, we appreciate that because last year in 2023, kind of dealing with what we call the cliff, the tax cliff that you mentioned, right? People could make 75,000 in $1 and then get no relief, and yet they're really no better financially than anybody else. So that was a very important issue for us. And what it's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but those that are age 50 and older, retired or not, actually contribute more to the gross state product than they take out. So that's why we agree with you that it was so critical to want to keep these folks in Connecticut, because they are paying sales tax, they are paying gas tax, they are paying property tax, and they're not availing themselves of like the schools and other things. So they actually are contributing more than they're taking out, and you don't want to lose them. And so that work we really do appreciate. And I would be remiss if I didn't say to our
John, so we're the ones too. Because I'm of that age. I don't pull Social Security yet, but I could if I wanted to. But we go out to the restaurants. We spend money there. We have grandchildren. We spend money endlessly on them. We try not to spoil them, but grandparents will be grandparents, and I don't care what age income you are. You're going to shopping with a grandchild, and you're spending money. So but I think it's important for us to keep always that on top of mind as a legislator, for me anyway, that the discretionary income really comes from the elderly community, those that are 50 or 55 and above, 60 and above. And listen, we are looking to, I know, and I just shared with you the phase out or the phase in of the pensions and Social Security, right? But and that's taking place in 2024. But we're going to be introducing legislation that all income should be tax exempt if you're over, 75 years and over. I don't know how far or how many, if it has legs or not. Particularly, we know now currently there are agencies that are going over budget. So what we expected for revenue, we're not going to meet those markets, but we're still going to end up the year with a surplus. But we'll see what happens. It could be a little unconstitutional because of the age. So we've got to sort of sort that out. Other legislation and that we're looking to work on is to help with the lower healthcare costs. It's on top of everybody's mind. I don't care, if you're single, if you're married, you're retired, live in a convalescent facility. We're talking, proposing legislation for reinsurance, all as well as making sure that if you go to a hospital, you're billed for a facility fee for a certain amount. If you go to an outpatient facility, that amount should be, we're told it's lower. But, there's some that are charging a higher fee if they're part of the system. We need to correct that. Prescription drugs is an ongoing battle all the time. So we're looking into that and holding that the drugging industry more accountable for why are certain drugs so high in cost. So we should not be individuals. Families should not be in the spot where they have to choose: do I pay my heating? Do I pay for my prescription? That's we need to do our best to rectify that.
Well, Senator, I know, Ann, you're appreciative of all that, and so are we.
Very
And
much so. Thank you, Senator, for all your hard work on that. And it's obvious you have a passion about it too, which is great.
I would be remiss, Senator, if I didn't mention to our viewers and listeners that, for all the work you've done since you've been in the Senate, and particularly the work you did last year with regards to the fixing that tax cliff, we were really honored to be able to honor you with a Legislative Achievement Award for your work on that. And I want to make sure our our members know, that we really appreciate the work you did, because it is an issue that's been around as long as I've been at AARP, a long time. And, when people like you got up there and stuck at it, we were able to get that achieved. So we do appreciate that. And I just wanted everybody to know that.
John, thank you so much for that award. I'm truly honored. I'd like to be a part of a group that are working to do the right thing and trying to bring common sense legislation to the table and to our state, so that we can really truly say that Connecticut's really a good place to live.
Well, we appreciate that. And now, so we're coming up a little bit on time, and I do want to make sure you've talked about a lot of other priorities you have, and it seems like you've got your plate full. But I'm going to give our last question. I'm going to skip right to it to Ann to ask, and this is kind of our constituent, activist question.
Great. Thank you, John. As a Connecticut citizen, can you tell me, Senator, what's the best way for someone like me to stay informed about what's happening in the General Assembly? And maybe even more importantly, how can someone like me become more actively involved in the process?
Oh, that is so important that constituents, whether they're from the 31st district or any district in the state, that involvement. You go back to our founding fathers, what they wrote, the Constitution they wrote gave us the freedom to stand up and to say something that we may not agree with. And we're a country of laws, that we agreed to elect individuals to create laws that would govern us as a body of people, right? That ability to stand up. I'm seeing more involvement in my district than I've ever seen before. People are standing up and they're getting involved, and I hope that we're setting a good example to say, speak your mind. We will debate, we will talk, we will listen to what each other have, and then the end. If you're part of an organization, whether you're part of a city council or a legislator up the Capitol, in the end, we are going to listen, we're going to debate, and we're going to vote, and then that will move forward from there. And without really getting too emotional about anything. So to get involved, my God, what you're doing right now, you're advocating for AARP, and you're trying to do your part in advocating, right? And with these interviews and so forth, the calling your legislator if you're not happy with something you heard through maybe what they heard us talk about today. I hope not, but call your legislator. Hey, I'm not happy with that. How about emailing? For some, it's contributing financially to a specific cause. AARP as an example, who will in turn use those funds to lobby for their cause, their values that they have. So I can't say enough for that type of one-on-one, that making that phone call. I learn more by having breakfasts and inviting constituents to come to those breakfasts. They listen for a little update from me, or immediately we start talking about issues right away. And I may not have all the answers, but I'll get back to you. But I think if they ever want to participate, I hope they find the strength to do it, because I think they will feel in some way that they've contributed to the process of our government. So it's all aboard.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's great, Senator. And we're coming up on the close here. And I just wanted to first thank our great AARP volunteer, Ann Young-Jaffe, for her great effort here and all the work she does with AARP. And I especially want to thank our guest here, State Senator Henri Martin, who one of the recipients of a 2023 AARP Legislative Achievement Award. And Senator, any final words you want to impose on us?
How about good health to everyone, and in hopes that the year 2024 will bring a lot of smiles to everyone's faces.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words, Senator Martin. And we thank you all for joining us today for another edition of AARP Coffee and Tea with AARP Connecticut, and we hope you join us again next time. Thank you and have a great morning.